Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We are celebrating our Asian American and Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community today. And I'm Ulia Gosart. I'm a chair of Diversity Committee. Who helped to co-organize this event, and I just would love to thank all of our presenters, our panelists, people who join us, and Erica in particular for leading the organization of this event. Dr. Chow, our iSchool director, unfortunately could not join because he's leading an iSchool retreat simultaneously right at this moment. But he sent an email and I'll read it as our kickoff welcome. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our AANHPI Symposium. On behalf of the organizers, I want to sincerely thank all of you for joining us today, and especially extend our gratitude to our outstanding panelists for sharing their time, expertise, and experience with us. I also want to give a special thank to our iSchool AANHPI community for their hard work, leadership, and dedication in organizing and hosting this event. As someone who is proudly Asian American and who has had the privilege of serving as director of the SJSU iSchool for past 5 years, this symposium is especially meaningful to me. It is an opportunity to celebrate our communities, elevate important conversations, and continue building spaces of inclusion, leadership, and collaboration. I also want to apologize that I cannot be with you this morning as we are currently holding our all-school retreat at the same time. Please know that I'm thinking of you and very much appreciate your participation and support. Thank you again for being here, and I hope you all have a wonderful, engaging, and inspiring symposium. And on that, without further ado, Erica, please take the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Gosart. So welcome to the iSchool's 2026 AANHPI Heritage Month Symposium. San Jose State University's theme for API and SWANA Heritage Month this year is Canvas of the Future. We are here to acknowledge and appreciate cultures that have shaped communities that surround us, and we hope today's symposium offers everyone watching an enriching experience. I will hand over the mic to my peer and fellow AANHPI iSchool Student Group Officer, Maria Hu.
Good morning, everyone. Our keynote speaker is an expert in 20th and Asian American history, driven by a passion for preserving stories and connecting. Founded the first oral history project at Chapman University, where she is the and chair of special collections and archives. I first met Annie in 20. Annie embodies what she teaches: dedication. Her leadership stems from her strength and perseverance as a proud daughter of and the first generation college graduate from UCLA in MLIS and history, a DEI champion and diversity, inclusion, and cultural heritage, and has presented at professional conferences. She presents Interwoven Histories, stories of Japanese and Mexican American resilience in Annie.
Oh, thank you so much, Maria, coincidentally my former intern, and thank you to Erica, who I met very serendipitously at our local public library, of which she works at, and then we recognized each other, did the Spider-Man fingers, and started catching up, and she graciously asked me if I wanted to talk today, and so thank you so much, folks, for inviting me. I want to acknowledge any students that are listening to this talk right now, whether synchronously or asynchronously, I recall how hard it was to be a master's student, to be a graduate student. And I just want to acknowledge you. I know that it can be very challenging. It can be very challenging. And especially for those who are working full-time, going to school full-time, also those who are going to school part-time and working multiple jobs and being caretakers and taking care of their loved ones. So I just wanted to say I acknowledge you folks, okay? All right, now let us start the official presentation and see whether I can share this. All right. Yes, Interwoven Histories. Can you tell I double-checked what the theme of the symposium was and made sure to title my presentation accordingly. Interwoven Histories, stories of Japanese and Mexican-American resilience in the 1940s. As Maria mentioned, I am Annie Tang. I am the Chair of Special Collections and Archives, as well as the University Archivist over at Chapman University in Orange, California, which is in Orange County in Southern California. And today, I will be talking about a really important court case. But before I go even deeper into that court case that really affected change in Orange County in California and nationally across this country, I just want to reiterate that something that Maria said. I am the proud daughter of immigrants. I am the proud daughter of refugees. Pictured is my father's military ID card when he was fighting with the Americans for the Army of the Republic of Vietnam as a young 18-year-old man who was drafted into the war. In the middle is my family, at least with the two oldest siblings and my mother, my father, my mother, my older sister Jenny, and oldest brother Jeffrey in Saigon in 1978. Oh, and apologies, I'm going to move my little Zoom screen out of the way. And lastly, this is incredibly rare for a lot of immigrant families and those who came during the immigrant generation. We actually do have a photograph from of the fishing vessel that was used to smuggle my family out of Vietnam. I'm Chinese Vietnamese, and we came during that second wave of the Vietnam post-Vietnam War Asian American immigration. This, I believe, was taken in Thailand when the boat, the fishing vessel, landed safely there. And I wanted to mention just a little bit about my own history, not because it is, Asian American History Month, but I believe it is imperative for me to tell this history in these most challenging times that we live in. And I just want to encourage those of you who are able to just keep fighting. So today I want to talk about, apologies, a landmark case. It's called Mendez et al. V. Westminster School District of Orange County et al., 1947. This predates Brown versus Board by 7 years. It is a federal court case which desegregated Orange County, California, where I am in Southern California. It desegregated public schools in our region. It made Mexican-only schools, and yes, that I'm actually using the parlance of that time. That is what they called them. The Mexican-only schools, unconstitutional in our area. This case influenced the desegregation of public schools statewide as well, even though there was no California state case that actually desegregated schools. This regional Orange County legislation actually influenced the rest of the state. And so it later set a precedent. It actually was used in Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka in 1954. There were countless families that were involved in this battle to get their children, BIPOC families, brown families, to get their children the best education that they could locally. And these families fought against 4 different school districts in Orange County. These families included the Mendezes, the Guzmans, the Estradas, the Bermurezes, and the Palominos. Today, I'll be talking just about 2 families, one family that is mentioned in the court case and one family that is not, the Mendezes and the Munamitsus. The Munamitsus being the Japanese-American family behind Mendez v. Westminster. When Gonzalo and Felicitas Mendez, two California farmers, sent their children to a local school, their children were told that they would have to go to a separate remedial school reserved for Mexican-American students. The Mendez family, mother Puerto Rican, father Mexican-American, recruited similarly aggrieved Mexican-American parents from local school districts for a federal court case challenging school segregation. My institution, Chapman University, possesses several collections related to this court case, with the majority of the images from this presentation stemming from these holdings. Let me please introduce you to the two families. We have this beautiful black and white studio photograph of the Minamitsu family from the early 1940s. We have the oldest son, Seiko, second oldest, Salo. We have Seima, the patriarch, the father. We have Namio, who is Seima's stepmother. His father remarried later in life. Then we have the youngest two girls, twin daughters, Kazuko, Akiko, and the matriarch, Masuko. We have the Mendez family. This photo was taken in the late 1930s. We have Felicitas, Gonzalo, her husband, Sylvia, their oldest. Remember her name and face. She'll be very important later on. Gonzalo Jr., and not in this photo yet because Jerome wasn't born yet, but he is part of the story as well. Jerome was born later. The Minamitsus were an Orange County Japanese American family in agriculture, as many, many Japanese were during this time period in that region. In the left photo, and all these photos date to about the 1940s. In the first photo, we have the white cottage. It's a simple cottage, but that was the family's main home on the asparagus ranch that they owned. We have the oldest sons, as I mentioned earlier, Seiko and Salo, with an unidentified man, most likely either a relative or an unidentified ranch hand. And notice the car, the corner of the car with the tire and the lights. Somebody in the Minamitsu family, we have a lot of their photographs, was definitely an artistic endeavoring photographer. They took a lot of artistic shots like this, and I very much enjoy reviewing them and showing them off to students on class visits. And lastly, we have the large wooden barn, brown barn of the Asparagus Ranch in Westminster. And again, pivoting back to the Mendez family, we have Felicitas, who her heritage was of Puerto Rican heritage. Oftentimes, the history of this court case, it gets centered on Mexican Americans, which is not 100% wrong, but there were also a diversity of Hispanic and Latino folks involved in the fight. It just happened to be that the majority of families fighting for desegregation of their children's schools, many of them were Mexican American. But she was Puerto Rican American, and her husband Gonzalo is Mexican. And here's little Sylvia. You might remember her in that one of the first slides. She was a little older then. This is her at about 12 years old, and would have been about what she looked like at the end of the court case. And again, Felicitas and Gonzalo, possibly in Santa Ana. We don't have a location for this, but this was most likely taken in Santa Ana outside their diner. They were restaurateurs. Gonzalo, like many Latino men of the time period, had been a farm laborer, but eventually he became a restaurateur, ran a successful restaurant with his wife. But something was niggling at Gonzalo. Gonzalo had a dream. He wanted to be his own man. He wanted to own or lead, rent out a farm. He wanted to be the boss man. He didn't want to be the ranch hand this time. But he didn't know how to quite get about it. Fortunately, his banker Frank Monroe, here pictured when he was a little younger, with his lovely wife, and working at the First National Bank in nearby Garden Grove. In the middle, he's that man in the middle there, and him looking sharp, of course, in his later years with his hat. He was not only a banker, he was a mentor, he was a friend to people of all colors. His bank, and I believe he eventually led this bank later, accepted everyone of every color and creed. There was no discrimination there. He was a mentor and friend, especially to the BIPOC community, especially to younger folks, including Gonzalo. Gonzalo told Frank, because Frank in the community was somebody who was known as somebody who had really good financial acumen. He asked Frank, he told Frank, I'm actually really interested in owning or renting my own farm. Do you have any leads? And coincidentally, and unfortunately, he did. And for those of you that know your World War II history, of course, I'm not going to go ad nauseum into detail, but the Minomitsus wanted to save their farm because December 7th, 1941, the Imperial Japan bombs Hawaii, and that influences FDR to create Executive Order 9066, which incarcerates 125,000 folks of Japanese descent in the mainland U.S. And fun fact, or sad fact, for decades, it was initially known that it was 120,000 Japanese Americans. And it was not until the last couple of years that data is actually known to more accurately be 125,000 because there have been name book projects across the country at Japanese American museums where folks have been jotting down if they were descendants or if they are fortunately still living and with us who were interned or incarcerated. They've been writing their names one by one. And it's been discovered because of these Japanese American naming projects of those who are incarcerated that the number is more likely to be 125,000. So slowly but surely, the data is being updated in curricula, and of course in this talk, for example, but a lot of older literature still says 120,000. So going back to the Minomitsu family, like many Japanese families, their ownership of their land or their houses or their holdings or their businesses was at risk. And for a minority of Japanese, there were those fortunate few who were able to find non-Japanese friends, loved ones who were able to save their property for them, either by leasing the property, so you could still own land, but you'd have to lease it, or you had to sell it to somebody. And a lot of, unfortunately, Japanese Americans were gypped in deals, of course not with loved ones, but with total strangers, and in the rush to transition to the incarcerated life at the internment camps. So remember that Frank Monroe is a banker, and he happens to also be the banker of not just Gonzalo. He is the banker to oldest son, Seiko Minomitsu. Seiko had been going to First National Bank of Garden Grove since he was 8 years old, and that is because at that time, foreign-born Japanese men were not allowed to own land, and his father was, in essence, the head of the family. Yes, was the head of the farm, but on paper, Seiko was the landowner because he was a birthright citizen. He was born here. So he had been going to the bank with his father, translating for his father, written English verbally as well, and had gotten to know Frank Monroe and actually knew Frank Monroe until Monroe's dying days. He saw him as a friend and mentor. When Frank found out that the family had to save their farm, and when he found out that Gonzalo Mendez wanted to be a farmer, it was speaking of serendipitous, that word I used earlier, it was a serendipitous moment. So Monroe introduces the families to each other, I believe through correspondence, because by this point the Minomitsus had already left, had already been incarcerated, and the Mendezes actually drive, Felicitas and Gonzalo actually drive to Poston incarceration camp, where the majority of the family is in Arizona around 1952. Why were the families separated? You see that Sama, I'll point him out right here. Sama's right here, upper right corner, on the most right. He is with other men in what was a Department of Justice prisoner of war incarceration camp in Santa Fe. A lot of us know, maybe not all of us have memorized every Japanese internment camp. There were many. What you folks don't know is that those were official federal designations, internment camps. There were many, many other places that were involved in the incarceration, whether it was the relocation centers, those temporary transition centers that people en masse got moved to before heading to the camps, or these POW camps. Let me talk about these kind of relocation centers. For example, for those of you in Southern California, you may know Santa Anita Racetrack is famous not just for the races, but also as a place where a lot of the local Japanese were incarcerated right before they went to the final destination. And there are accounts of people noticing not just the horse manure and the hay, but also the paint, the fresh white paint that was barely slapped on to the walls and the floor and the ground that they had to sleep on, dirt floor. Sama, here in this photograph, was imprisoned separately because any Japanese leader, which tended to be men, patriarchal society, who were strong community, spiritual, and political leaders who refused to renounce their Japanese citizenship, were seen as rabble-rousers. So they were rounded up and put into a separate camp so that they would not influence the rest of the population. So that is why, sadly, Sama, the father, the patriarch of the Minomitsus, was separated from his family for 1 to 2 years. And I just wanted to say their names again. We have Masako, Seilo, Seiko, Kazuko, and Akiko. Going back to the farm. So the Mendezes now have leased the farm. They are living in the main house that the Minomitsus lived in. It was a very generous lease deal. The family left the majority of their equipment behind. So the equipment was also leased out to the Mendezes. The Mendezes really had a ready-made shop. And that year when the Minomitsus left to the internment camps, the harvest had already actually been harvested. The asparagus had already been put into the farmhouse. So it was actually a very it could not have been more, I don't want to say perfect, but a great circumstance for the family until we get to the climax of the story. So here is a photo of the Mexican-only Hoover School in Westminster, California. So the Mendezes settle in to Westminster, California. They settle into this farm life, and then finally the Mendezes know, okay, we gotta enroll the kids to the local school, and so they choose, of course, the closest geographically walking distance from the Minomitsu farm, 17th Street School, and that was the school that the Minomitsu girls, Akiko and Kazuko, attended before they left. However, the plans of the family were not to be. I'm going to read a passage from a book called Making Americans by public school teacher Jessica Lander. It's a wonderful book about the successes, the triumphs of immigrants in America in fighting for education for their families. In the heat of late summer in 1943, Soledad Vidari set off from her brother's newly leased asparagus farm to the nearby in Orange County, California. With her were 5 little ones, her 2 daughters, Alice and Virginia, and her niece and nephews, 7-year-old Sylvia, and her younger brothers, Gonzalo Jr. and Jerome. Likely the sun was already high, a slight breeze playing in the palm fronds at the school's entrance. The school year was set to begin, and Vidari had arrived that September morning to enroll the family. Yet when she handed in the enrollment papers, the school administrator looked up and scrutinized the children. Despite being cousins, the kids looked a little alike. Vidari's daughters were light-skinned and hazelnut-haired. They carried with them, too, the French surname of their Mexican father. Their cousins, in contrast, had the skin, the color of rich sienna, glossy black hair, and the last name Mendez. Peering at the children, the school administrator calmly told Vidari that her daughters could stay, but that the other 3 were not welcome. Sylvia and her brothers, the administrator explained, would have to attend the Mexican school a mile away. Livid, Vidari turned on her heel, refusing that morning to enroll any of the children in school. So we have Gonzalo Mendez's sister being rightfully angry, I'll just say pissed, She refuses to send her children as well to the school that refuses to send her niece and nephews. And she tells her brother, Gonzalo, and he is equally livid. And he's right to be, because of the different conditions of the Mexican-only Hoover school that they wanted to send his children to versus the mostly white 17th Street school that their kids were literally walking distance of. The Hoover Street school was derelict, bit run down. The teachers were trained to teach the children domestic work and the work of laborers. The school was adjacent, the play yard was adjacent to a cow pasture, which you might think, if you like Anne of Green Gables, for example, what an idyllic thing to be right next to a cow pasture. However, the cow pasture had an electrified fence, so there was always a risk of the children getting hurt. Well, Mr. Mendez was not going to take that because remember, it was a mile away when 17th Street School was only a few blocks away, and it had subpar education and safety. So Gonzalo fought hard. He complained to the school, reported to the school, and wrote petitions. This is an example of one in 1944. You could see Gonzalo's name and his wife's name here. Dozens of parents. And I'd like to read you a line. There is racial discrimination, and we do not believe there is any necessity for it. Some of our children are soldiers in the war. All are American born. And it does not appear fair nor just that our children should be segregated as a class. Because remember, we have the tumultuous 1940s. America has just entered World War II. Countless Latino American men and some women are fighting right now. And so it's talked about a lot, obviously, the racial injustice of having our brown men, our black men, our Asian American folks fighting in this war, and yet the injustices at home are huge and broad. So the Mendez family decide to fight harder. All these petitions go on deaf ears, by the way. They fight harder. They hear of a Jewish American lawyer by the name of David Marcus, who's a civil rights lawyer. He just won a successful case in San Bernardino County, just an hour northeast of Orange County. And he won against racist policies, segregationist policies regarding the public pool and how they barred Mexican families from entering them. So he was known at this time to the Latino community as someone who was willing to fight for them. So in 1945, he represents the five families, plaintiffs in the school case. I cannot stress to you folks how challenging it was for the Mendez family. They were the first, of course, to find four other families. There was a very fearful time because they were going against a racist segregation system, and they could be retaliated against, whether through their children or themselves or their children's education, or either financially or their physical welfare. But I just want to call out again the names of the Ramirezes, Guzmans, Palominos, and the Estradas. So in 1945, this case goes to court against 5 school districts in the Orange County area. This case goes on for a year. Marcus's legal defense is one of the earliest defenses in which sociology is used. Sociology is still a very new study, a new field at this time, but he uses sociology to fight back. What his legal team did was they looked into the backgrounds of every superintendent that was called to witness in the case. And one master's thesis came to mind of James Kent, who was the superintendent of the Garden Grove School District. Young guy, by the way. He got his master's thesis in 41, became a superintendent already just a couple of years later. So this is a screenshot from his thesis from the University of Oregon. And This very page was actually used against him in the court case. Mexicans seem to possess some undesirable attitudes and characteristics. Segregation into separate schools will help change some of their attitudes and characteristics so as to benefit both the Mexican and white child. Pivoting back to the parallel lives of the Munimitsus, who also are suffering this another type of injustice at this time. While the Mendezes are fighting outside, and they're able to at least walk about in society, the Munimitsus are still incarcerated. So over in Poston, Arizona, the family, at least without Sema, has mainly settled in. Masako, we're pretty sure, was part of the School of Tailoring. This is their class photo from 1945. And in the middle, there's an indefinite leave card of oldest son Seiko's. An indefinite leave card was basically like an ID card you used during your parole. So for those Japanese folks who were on good behavior at camps, they were permitted to leave, but it was not freedom. It was, if it was temporary freedom. It was a way for employers to get cheap labor. They would not pay the market value for wages, but at least these families would get some income and a little bit of freedom for whoever the breadwinner would be in this case, of course, with Sema gone, 21, 22-year-old Seiko was the breadwinner at this point. So you see here that he was permitted to work in Welby, Colorado. And lastly, we have a very poignant photo. This is one of my favorite photos of the family. Masako with the twins. They are in their Girl Scout brownie uniforms, and they're just giving like the biggest smiles. And I've talked to a descendant of the family. She thinks that this photo was actually sent to Sema over in New Mexico as like, Dad, we're still okay, and that's like a big smile. And I want to point out that those brownie uniforms, I'm pretty sure, were assuredly made by the women in the School of Tailoring class. I do not think they were purchasing the brownie uniforms at this point. So a year goes by, and in 1946, Judge Paul McCormick rules in favor of the plaintiffs. And remember, David Marcus had a genius defense, sociological defense. And Paul McCormick, in his last statement of that case, says it's because he's making this decision because of the social, psychological, and pedagogical cost of segregated education. Because as many of you know, at this time, it was very much accepted and even wanted to segregate. But the refrain was always separate but equal, separate but equal. But the problem was it was not equal or equitable education. When you're teaching white students at one school that they could be doctors and lawyers, but you're teaching Mexican students at another school that they could be dishwashers and farmhands, that's a completely different education. So not shockingly, the school districts appealed. They had the money because they were able to pool the resources of 4 school districts together. And I would like to also talk about the financial costs to the families, because remember, many of these folks were working class, blue collar folks who were paying for this. And a big reason why the Mendez family's name is first on the court case is, one, they were the first to fight back. And secondly, they actually financially paid the most for the court case because of the income from the Munimitsu family's asparagus farm. So though before all this happened, the Mendez family wanted to save the money for themselves, for their future perhaps farm, they decided to use the income that they could have saved from the farm for the court case. So that is why the Mendez family's name is first in line. Some of us in academia may understand that, who's first in line, right? for the paper, who's first in line for that credit. So the school districts lost. The Federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ultimately upheld 1 year later for another round of trials in 1947 that the school's actions actually violated California law. So what's going on with the Munamitsus during this last 1 to 2 years, right? Because the Mendezes win 1946, but an appeal happens 1947. They still gotta fight, right? The last decision's in 1947. The war ends in 1945. The Munamitsus leave around that time. The camps, finally, thank God. Another happy end to the story. Sama, a little bit before the end of the war, gets to reunite with his family in Poston. He is let go of that POW camp in New Mexico, and he gets to reunite with his family. So they at least get to spend the last bit of time together before they're let go. So what happens? This is the most curious financial arrangement I've ever seen in the archives in my life, and any archives I've at least worked at. The lessee, this is a lease agreement between Seiko Munamitsu, the oldest son, who in name owns the land, and Gonzalo. Seiko is the landlord, the lessor. Gonzalo is the lessee. The lessee, Gonzalo, agrees to furnish the lessor, the landlord, Seiko, and his family with such work as is available on and around the farm, herein leased, and to pay the minimum of prevailing wages to each person employed. What does that mean? I know that's a lot of legalese. The landlord is requesting his renter to please pay them because they're going to live on the land and farm the land for their renter. Why did Seiko and the family do that? Because they knew that they still needed to fight in the court case, and they wanted the Mendezes to finish their harvest, earn the income from that, continue with the court case, fighting in the court case. So the Munamitsus choose to live in the worker cottages, continue to let the Mendezes live in that beautiful white main house. And not only that, but they will work for the Mendezes. And on Seiko Munamitsu's 1945, 1946 IRS tax form, he actually lists Gonzalo Mendez as his employer. It's a very interesting kind of full circle situation. So yeah, the Mendezes and the other families win. Sylvia Mendez and her brothers finally get to go to 17th Street School with more rigorous academic standards. The Munamitsus return to their farm for a bit, living away from the main house, but are happy to be free. And we are also pretty certain that they also invite other Japanese Americans from the camps to live with them because they had several worker cottages in the transition out from the camps. Because we actually have some artifacts that are not associated with the family at all, but have other Japanese families' names, and we're pretty sure that those families left those behind or left them as gifts as thank you to the family. So what is the legacy today? That is a photo of Sylvia, that little girl that I showed you earlier, Sylvia Mendez, receiving the National Medal of Honor from Barack Obama, our first Black president. And she received that honor because of her tireless work as a civil rights activist when she retired from nursing, by the way, a job that requires higher education. She retires from nursing and realizes no one knows her family story, and she spends the next 3 decades and I've met her, she's a wonderful woman, next 3 decades telling that story. There are schools named after the families. There are murals with the families in them. That's Janice Munamitsu, the donor of the Munamitsu family papers. She's a descendant. She is Seiko's daughter. She's the daughter of oldest son Seiko, and that is him behind her. And behind me, that's me in the middle. Behind me is Sama. It was a beautiful mural ceremony we went to. There are public spaces that tell this story now, and that is a statue of Felicitas and Gonzalo. There was a commemorative stamp, I believe, over 15 years ago that came out. Documentaries, animated and live action documentaries. And lastly, what I'm most proud of to tell you about is that California in 2024 enacted a law which requires Mendez to be taught in California schools. We are at time. So I will now leave you with a beautiful, what I think is a beautiful poignant poem by Janice Munimitsu from her book, Kindness of Color. She actually writes about the story about these two families, her family and the Mendezes. And she starts off her book with a poem. Barbed wire imprisoned, war of bombs and racism. Hands offer kindness. Fences keep you out. Fight for school for all children. Hands offer kindness. No more high fences. No barbed wire to imprison. Cultivate kindness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annie, for sharing your expertise and teaching us about these two families' interwoven histories and the impact that they've had on our society and the rights that we hold today. The work you do as an archivist is so important, and we appreciate you for spending your morning with us. Next, we're going to transition to our panel discussion. Hello, my name is Erica Vu, and I will be your discussion moderator today. I am a student in the MLIS program at SJSU School of Information. I am also the very first member, first chair, and co-founder of the AANHPI iSchool student group at SJSU. Please allow me to introduce our four panelists who are LIS professionals and leaders working in the public library sphere. And I looked you all up online, so if any information is inaccurate, please feel free to correct me. Our first panelist is Jeanette Contreras. She is the library director of Placentia Library District and is the first Asian American to hold the position. She earned her master's degree in library science from San Jose State University and also has a bachelor's degree in business administration from Cal State Fullerton. Our second panelist is Gayathri Kanth. She is the director of library services for the city of Palo Alto. She earned her MLIS degree from San Jose State University and also holds a master's degree in English literature from the University of Madras, India. Michael Lambert is our third panelist. He is the city librarian for the San Francisco Public Library and the first Asian American to hold the position. He served as president of the Public Library Association in the 2024 to 2025 term, and he earned his MLIS degree as well as a bachelor's degree in history from the University of South Carolina. Our final panelist is Patricia Patty Wong. She is the city librarian for Santa Clara City Library. She was also the American Library Association's first Asian American president when she held the role in the 2021 and 2022 term. She earned her master's degree in library science from UC Berkeley and has a bachelor's degree in women's studies. She also serves as faculty at SJSU's iSchool. And she is one of my favorite professors here. So thank you all for being here today. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that terms such as AAPI, AANHPI, and APIDA are somewhat broad, and that everyone has cultural and individual identities that are specific, multifaceted, and unique. I use these terms inclusively and for brevity and without intention to diminish anyone's cultural identity. So thank you all for being here. And let's get into our questions. All of my questions are directed to everyone, so please feel free to answer whichever ones speak to you. So my first question today for you is, what is a part of your culture or heritage that you are most proud of, and why?
Well, I think part of for me to answer the question is, I would agree with what Annie had shared. It's the resilience that we have, right? And also sacrifice. I think as Asian American, that's one of our true core value, right? It's family. is the essence and points of the family connection, and also the strength and determination, right, that we have. I can only speak for myself. I came to the U.S. as an 8-year-old with no English other than the please and the thank you. Those are two important words. And to be able to do that with a family of 13 of us in a house that's 2 bedroom and 1 bathroom. So that's a lot of determination, a lot of strength to get there, and grew up in a community that was all white. Our sponsors were Caucasian. Students were Caucasian. We didn't eat the same food. We didn't smell the same. We didn't look like them. But the determination for us to know that we can have a better world if we let go of some of this and just continue and focus on education. So I would say that would be the value for me personally. So I want to ping it back to Michael.
Thanks, Jeanette. And I just want to acknowledge Annie for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for educating all of us about that important chapter in our history. Well, I am riding high right now. Happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We had the Academy Awards for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community in San Francisco last night. I'm joking, of course, but we go big in San Francisco. 37.2% or more now of our population are AANHPI. And every year, our public library is a central partner in celebrating the diversity and culture of our community. And we have this foundation, the APA Heritage Foundation of San Francisco, that is really a fiscal sponsor and a lead nonprofit that helps curate programming with us, the Asian Art Museum, the Center for Asian American Media. We have an award ceremony and a big gala at City Hall, and it is so affirming. And I feel blessed to live and work in a city and county of San Francisco that really honors our community. It's so meaningful to me as a Korean American that grew up in the Deep South, completely disconnected from my Korean heritage. When I was a young man in the 70s and 80s, I was ashamed to be Asian American. And I was just reflecting on that last night with a couple of my fellow department heads and other civic leaders that are also my vintage, and how far we've come, So I am just really delighted to be here, part of this illustrious panel and celebrating AANHPI month with all of you. I think Gayathri comes next in the alphabet, right?
I guess. Hi, everybody. What can I say? I mean, I'm still just, amazed by Annie's presentation. This is something that I did not know, this particular piece of history, and it just amazes me how much the humanity of people just comes out. And that's one thing that I was thinking about. Great questions, by the way, Erica. Very thoughtful. And I was thinking, what am I bringing? I am an immigrant and came into this country when I was 22. So a lot of formative years were in India. And then I moved here as a, new bride to a guy that I knew, but, not very much. So it was a very interesting time in my life. One thing that I felt that the India that I grew up, it was a very, very tolerant place. I mean, people just existed with so many different ideas. And I mean, there were like multiple religions. The Hinduism religion also believes in multiple gods. And people had different languages, and people just lived together. And, and I felt like, so when I came here, it was kind of, oh, wow, this is a different country. But it wasn't that different, because guess what? I'm used to that pluralism. So that was helpful to kind of look at people as people. And also, when I came in, there weren't that many Indo-Americans. And so that was another interesting thing, is like, people were very interested in a lot of stuff that I did. One of the things is I have the dot, right? Like, they would always like ask me, what does this mean? How I dealt with, and I dealt with everything saying that people are interested in knowing. So that's how I started with everything, is like, so then, there's an opportunity to share my culture with others. And so that's how we started in this country. I'm very, very thankful. Again, I live in the Bay Area, where the multiculturalism is, I think it's amazing. Just like the other day, I was telling my garden group friends that one of the best things is to eat loquat, which I would have never known if I had lived in India, honestly. So simple things to profound things. Having this diversity is just amazing. And also, like, Palo Alto is also very, very diverse. We have a big Asian American population here. And so we have a lot of different programs, and they're very well attended. So, and the best part of our attendance now that I'm seeing is, previously, when we used to have these programs, we would only have people who belong to a certain culture attend. But now I'm seeing such diversity in people attending. And to me, that's like the best part of what libraries do really well, is to share information and knowledge, I guess. So, Patty.
Yes, thanks, Gayathri. I think my beginnings are very different and diverse from the rest of our panel. I'm a fourth generation Californian, and so it's a very different kind of upbringing that I had, but with very deep roots in Hawaii. So my mother is Chinese American, but born and raised in in Hawaii before it became a state. So it brought a whole dimension of the values that we share together as true community, and very diverse there, very diverse in California, where I grew up in the Glen Park area. I think there probably would have been maybe 15 different languages spoken on the block from all kinds of places around the world. And so it was, I grew up in a really different kind of community where food and culture and language and music and all of that led into everyone's appreciation for one another's culture. So and I'm lucky and blessed, as Michael and the rest of us are, to really live and work in communities where that celebration of diversity is really a focal point for all of us, in terms of appreciating one another's communities and understanding that really complex learning that is happening in everyone's neighborhood, basically. So it's led, I think, for me to understand that ethnicity, cultural identity has always been part of part of libraries, for sure, but also part of our history. Annie, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for bringing that to life and to light in understanding that our cross-cultural relations actually happened many, many years ago. It wasn't just, this is a wonderful, I think, illustration of that. But know that especially in World War II, we had a lot of African American community members taking care of Japanese American households when they had to leave. And libraries are able to share that kind of deep, rich history with our community. And we should do more of that too. But that's, I think, something that I'm most proud of. And I know that we all take that responsibility very seriously in our profession and also sometimes in our personal life too. So very happy to be part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question is, how does your own cultural identity influence how you approach your work as leaders in the LIS profession?
We can go backwards if you want. So I'll start real quick. Because I think there's been such a strong appreciation of the multiple facets for me in terms of cultural identity and engagement. My first home was actually with Reforma, which may surprise a lot of people, but Reforma and CALA, the Chinese American Librarians Association, and then our association specifically focusing on Latino and Spanish-speaking communities and their heritage. And so as a result, one of the things I would share with students that are out there and anyone who's listening is that working through the ethnic professional library associations and bringing others with you, that cross-culturalness, that building bridges, that's actually very important to me. And I think it would serve all of us well to continue that work. But that's one of the things that I bring to the table in terms of the profession.
I think what I bring is really the curiosity, to learn about what was new and now a home. So just having that and looking at the changes with curiosity and adapting to it and helping our community navigate changes. I think that's really helpful. Also, we are as a city going through financial difficulties this year. And so helping our staff go through that is that curiosity of learning, like how do we adapt and provide relevant services to our community. We're still going to be providing the services and the programming especially that really reflects our community, and just seeing that the joy that people have when they come to the library and see materials in so many different languages. It's just a really, really profound thing. I mean, I see them and then, I can talk about Tamil, which is my language. A couple of people, they did not know because my last name is not very common. So they didn't realize I spoke the language, but they were like commenting about the authors. And it was just a really cool moment to see that people could identify themselves when they come to our libraries. So I feel like that, bringing that curiosity into everything, but also help people discover themselves in the library is just one of the best things I think we bring to that profession.
Well, when I think about how my own cultural identity influences my approach, I learned a new phrase this week: representation. Representation matters here in San Francisco. So we have 45 departments of municipal government. And we have approximately 7 or 8 department heads who are Asian American, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander. And it's really important that a community can see themselves reflected in the municipal workforce. And, we're so fortunate at the San Francisco Public Library. About 45% of our workforce is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander. So we are overrepresented relative to the population, which is rare, and it's a good thing. And we have continued to invest in our workforce. We have bilingual librarians. We have, collections in over 50 languages. We have something that is unique for urban libraries. We have affinity centers. So we have a Filipino center. We have a Chinese center. We have a bilingual Japanese language librarian embedded at our main library. And, what that does for us is it allows our staff to be ambassadors for, various constituencies, but also ambassadors for our library system to create culturally competent library programs and services. And, the other thing about, being the first Korean American, first Asian American city librarian in my position, I don't take that lightly. And I try to pay it back and continue to pay it forward by mentoring people in our profession, but also in municipal government. And, I participate in leadership development training and just try to share my career odyssey so that people can understand that if I can do it with my humble beginnings, that anything is possible.
So Michael speaks very humbly of himself, but he is a phenomenal library leader. So, and I wanted to reference that I grew up in Westminster. I lived there for about 30 years. My mom's still there in the same house I grew up in. So we heard a lot about the Mendes case. But for me, in terms of what influenced me is I'm passionate about bringing the invisible to be visible. In other words, for example, high school, I was always the last one to be picked on a sporting team, right? You get team A, team B, and it's always the Asian girl that's the last to get picked. So that's the invisible side of it that we feel like we're not given a chance because we're stereotyped, like we're timid, not very athletic, which is probably true in my case, but that we're just nerds, right? We just study, we don't have that. So when I look at Asian Americans, I always tell them that, remember, we have the same opportunity as the other folks. What we look like, what we sound like, what we eat, how we dress shouldn't dictate our ability and our potentiality to get to where you want to be. And I say that because I grew up in a family of 9 girls and 1 boy. So it's expected that all of us females are in the kitchen, but it's also the only career path, I think most of my panelists will agree to this, is that it's either engineering, doctor, or if you truly, truly want to do this, get into business. So, of course, this person got into business administration. That was it. And so there was never talk about library school, right? Nobody ever talked to us about library school. What do you mean library school? Why would you need a master's to shush and check out books for people? Why would anybody get a master for that? So it was, again, bringing the invisible visible, teaching and having that awareness, that education for my own family, not just my own family, my parents, to understand that world, but also the younger generation, because they never had thought about that. Because again, it was engineering or a doctor. There's no business anymore now. It's just engineering or a doctor, just those two. But then to explain to them the value of librarianship, what we do and why it's important for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, as well as other non-Caucasian groups, right? That our role is so important, especially to today's world, right? In today's society, what's going on, that we need to be front and be very visible. And this is where we have the opportunity to do that. And especially, I'll say this, I also have a soft heart for neurodiverse population. And Asian Americans, we don't do this. We hide this. It is a shame if you're autistic. It's a shame if you're walking with a limp, right? Anything that makes you different, it's shame. You've lost respect in other community, and so we started a program. I started a program called LEAP here at the library. It's called Library Experience Employment Access Program, and it's specifically to hire neurodiverse special needs adults. So we started with a 20-hour library page, and they're so grateful. Their family's so grateful, because otherwise they would be in hiding. They wouldn't have the opportunity to use their skills. These are folks that are really highly intelligent. They just think differently from the average of us, but they have the same skill, and we provide them the opportunity. And he's also Asian. Again, I think we have also the other side, which is the LGBTQAI plus, right? Oh, that's probably worse than neurodiverse, right? As an Asian, you cannot come out as an LGBTQ, right? AI plus. And so it's me mentoring those folks. Hey, you have a place in library school. You have a place in libraries, period. Come see what that looks like. We can talk to your parents. We can talk to your family. We can talk to your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that looks like. But I think to be there to support them in that, I think the representation and their different voices will make our libraries and our community as a whole will be even richer, greater. And I think that's where my skill comes in, is the ability to see the invisible and make them front row and being our future leader. So thank you.
As members of AANHPI communities, have you faced any internal or external barriers in your journey toward becoming library professionals? And if so, what were those barriers and how did you overcome them?
I'll jump in here on this one. I think the biggest barrier that I've faced has been in my own head. And I still grapple with this sometimes, just this feeling of imposter syndrome and not being smart enough or not being good enough. And it really goes back to my humble beginnings. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and my father was killed on active duty when I was 8 months old. And my Korean mother, she was uneducated. She was very young. She herself had a very difficult childhood, orphaned by the time she was a teenager. And she brought me to the United States and deposited me with my American grandparents that raised me in Columbia, South Carolina. And neither one of my grandparents had graduated from high school. Where they were from, rural North Carolina, my grandparents only had three options: either work in a textile mill or work on a farm, or my grandfather decided to go in the Army, and that was his ticket out of that existence. So, there was no roadmap of higher education, and I'm the first one in my family to graduate from college. But I've been fortunate to have mentors over the years that have supported me, and I've just, it's been a journey. I'll be 52 this year, and I've learned to be comfortable for the most part in my own skin and, to be authentic. And, you have to be you at the end of the day. And overcoming adversity, it makes you stronger in the end. But, I've come to recognize that I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, the secret to my success is surrounding myself with people that are better and much smarter than me. Um, and ironically, the more I reflect, growing up Asian in the South the way I did, that is what has created my superpower. My strength as a library administrator, as a department head, is being relational and being able to build relationships, garner support from my institution. And it is precisely because of how I grew up, having to, quickly relate to all kinds of people in all kinds of different situations and, being able to communicate, really as a survival skill. But, over the decades, I've been able to hone that into a skill that benefits my organization and ultimately benefits my community.
I'll jump in too, and thanks, Michael, for being so, I think, candid and honest. And I think that's when you're going to hear a little mutual praise, I think, from all of us about for each other, because I think we're all learning together about resiliency and what that looks like and what makes us who we are. You know, racism and bias, I think, has followed. I don't know if it's all of us, but at least at one point in our lives, we remember those instances. When I was Santa Monica library director, which is not that long ago, it was during COVID, and I got spat on. And it had nothing to do with the fact that I was the director. It had everything to do with the fact that I presented and looked Chinese, which I am, to that particular community. It was at a bar, and I called the police. And my PD colleagues, because we're all in the same boat, we all work for the city of Santa Monica, they were happy to respond and had it out with the individuals. But I will say the barkeep didn't do anything either. And they told me to go home and a whole lot of other epithets. But because there was such an anti-Asian, but specifically anti-China, right? Anti-Chinese kind of sentiment. And it was pretty hard, and really that wasn't that long ago. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody, they did know who I was, though, for reals. So it was an interesting moment. That the other thing is I had a great mentor as a young woman. But she said to me one thing, which was kind of interesting. We had just a few Asian Americans at the library at the time. And so we were all buddies, right? And we kind of sat together because sometimes you do that. If you don't know very many other people, there's a comfort in sitting with your colleagues. And she said, you don't have to sit together. And she said, in fact, I wish you wouldn't. And she herself was a Chinese American too. But we didn't understand what she was talking about at the time. And so I think one of the things that, I want to share with you is that you find your resilience when in colleagues like this, and for those of people who stand next to you, right, and with you, and talk about it. The department heads, when they got back together at Santa Monica, they all learned about it because, of course, it's kind of hard to keep that secret. And they all together kind of said, what, not only brave, but they wouldn't have thought about calling PD and how that we needed to do something about that educationally within the community. And so we did at the library. We actually had some forums that we talked about what it is to grow up in this community that we think is very, very diverse and very open and very understanding to have that happen. It was a surprise and a shock, but maybe not a shock to some, right? So it was an opportunity. And that led to, for instance, when after the George Floyd murders, the library stepped up right away and said, you know what? We have to do some healing right now because of all things. We had a big riot in the community, and my library was not a target because my homeless community protected the building. So I say that out loud to you because I think, just like Jeanette said, we have the opportunity to really make a difference, to turn things around. So even in the hardest times, even when maybe you feel yourself are the focal point of something diversive or maybe even harmful, we kind of have to turn that around. And be those brave people that can have good conversations and healing processes. So
I echo everyone's sentiment about that, and then I think for me the stereotypical is that, especially as a female Asian American, is that we're perceived to be and expected to be quiet and timid and not speak up, right? Do as you're told type of mantra. But I think, and so when we do speak up, they're like, whoa, where did that come from, right? And so, and what I say to the students on here is that don't ever let anyone tell you that you cannot speak up. Don't let them make you feel little. You have that power. Use that power, and then what you do right at that moment will carry on to the next generation of library leaders. They're watching, so be the mentor for them. And so, I mean, there will be uncomfortable situation like what Patty experienced, and I experienced with a couple of my board members who are not on my board anymore, but that when that challenge comes, I implore you to speak up, to speak with somebody so that that behavior doesn't continue on and manifest itself to your staff, to the culture that's in your world that you're leading. So you want to make sure you're an example to those folks. And so I say, regardless of what you look like, that shouldn't identify what you can do. And so make sure that you do that. Don't ever, and if you feel like you can't speak up, because there won't be another opportunity for you to do so. So I challenge you to do that. And I encourage you, and I know you all, the fact that you're here listening to all of us, that you do have the potential to do that. So that's mine.
All right, I can end this here. Totally relate to what everybody else is saying. Although Patty, I will say I've never experienced anything that much. But one of the things that I used to work in Cupertino Library, which, where Cupertino is like mostly Asian. But it was also interesting that some of the worst comments I had ever received were actually from Indo-Americans. Not number one, saying the same thing. You cannot be a librarian because guess what? You should have been, and you are a librarian because you're not good enough to be an engineer or a doctor. And a lawyer is okay, by the way, but so that was one of the comments. The other comments was also like very age-based, right? Like when you're a younger director or a younger manager, it's like you can't be in charge. And they would go immediately to, frankly, a white male who was reporting to me to think that he was going to do things and not me. So at that time, it just, it was very important at that time to make sure that everybody knew that you are in charge of the library and be very calm about it. And I know that a lot of you will face something like this. And that's why I wanted to bring this experience is like, then, deal with it, very matter of fact, but also establish that this is your role in the library. And yes, calling PD if needed, but also having a very good, I was also very fortunate that the white male who was actually there immediately said, actually, you need to talk to her because she's the supervisor. And so it's also like taking, like, Jeanette was saying, you're also expected to be behind the scenes, behind men, especially. And so intentionally taking roles that will put you in the front, that I think is really important. And I think that has really helped me over the years is, taking that opportunity to voice your opinion. Also, voice your opinion about the most vulnerable people. I think that's really important. I'm very proud to say that. I think in probably in Palo, maybe it's the first, we had a staff member who changed genders, and we were the first ones to navigate that. And it was so wonderfully done. I really think the city was wonderful too, but our staff was just very embracing. But part of the thing is the leadership that we all provide in making sure that it's a very, very collaborative environment.
Looking back from the time you entered the field of librarianship, how much have library services changed for minority and underserved communities? How far have we come, and what major work still needs to be done?
Librarianship historically, arguably, even currently, is not the most diverse of professions, to be diplomatic. And it's really important that we continue to push to diversify our profession, to build that pipeline so that we can attract more people of color into this profession. And, there's a saying, you measure what matters. And in 2020, the San Francisco Public Library, we codified our first racial equity action plan, and we looked at different dimensions like who's getting hired, who's getting fired, who's getting progressively disciplined, how much do people make in our organization, what is the demographic distribution of our workforce, but also looking more closely at what is the demographic distribution of the various classifications in our workforce, and setting discrete goals around activities that would create a more inclusive environment, a better organizational culture. And you have to have discrete goals and objectives, and you have to look at data, and you have to really keep striving to make data-driven decisions about, how you invest in your workforce. Now, you cannot use race or ethnicity as a criteria for hiring, but you can be intentional about how you recruit and, what communities you show up in, and where you target some of your recruitment efforts, or how you participate in career fairs. So I think librarianship has made some strides, but we still have a long way to go.
I would echo exactly what Michael's talking about. I think a lot of us need to do those audits of our work. We've done some similar things here. I don't have very many African American staff. That's a problem. I'll just say that out loud. It's a real problem, actually. It stems from history and a lot of other things. So the intentionality of recruitment actually is critical, which means we need to reach out where people are. Our spiritual centers, our churches, our any of the faith organizations, we have to partner with communities to get the word out because at least we want to have a pool of candidates to make the library more accessible to everybody, right? I mean, so Mike's the first Asian American San Francisco Public Library director. I'm the first one here. I was the first. You were, Mike, I don't remember if you're the first Asian American PLA president, but definitely I was the first ALA one. Now we've had subsequents after that, but as Mike said, when you measure what matters, if we keep saying we're the first, we're the second, we're the third, what kind of inroads have we really made? I mean, in 145 years, I was the first Asian American president. It doesn't mean that they didn't have other candidates, but I will tell you, the very first ALA candidate for president was Ching-Chi Chen, and that is when a colleague decided to openly oppose her and be the third candidate because he knew what the votes would do. And so it's an interesting dynamic. We've come a long way. We've had more people interested in the library as a profession. We have Spectrum. We have more scholarships and ways to find for community of all different sizes and shapes and groups to be more involved in libraries. But if most of our staff of color are at the as needed or lower levels within the spectrum, that says a few things too, right? I would strongly suggest that I often am very happy when staff come to talk to me about diversity and they want to do more because we're all working on it together. I think, and our colleagues across the association. So I would also encourage any of the team out there, any of the students who want to get active, please engage in our professional associations because we need you, but we also need your voice and we need your perspective. And all of us need one another in order to make this work. Anyway, sorry about the pulpit, but it's really, it's taken us so long, and yet we kind of don't see us moving forward except very incrementally. It comes almost in cycles. Our state library has changed their LSTA guidelines because of this. And so, I'm just going to be very forthright. I know I'm a supporter of the state library, believe me. But because of the situation we find ourselves in, it is very hard for us to do EDI work now openly.
Patty, thank you for voicing, and everyone voicing everything I've felt similar about. But talking about how we don't have enough BIPOC folks from BIPOC groups going into the library profession, especially our African American colleagues, right? Several years ago, there was a really great Library Juice article about what is going on. Why is it that what is a huge barrier to the profession, right? And obviously we can talk about the systematic racism. We can talk about that, but it was also the financial. That was a big result of the article. It was about how the master's degree, which we all know that's not 100% of the time major requirement to be an archivist, to be a librarian, to be an information professional, but we all know that to get one is to get a better salary, to get better wages, to really be upwardly mobile. And according to this study, it was the biggest factor was the difference between paraprofessional library and archives folks and professional library folks was the degree. And when you looked at paraprofessional folks, it was much more of a diverse spectrum of people's backgrounds. And you see it in, especially those of us who are closer to the city centers, you see it in the LAs, the library assistants that work with us, right? But yet once you kind of get to like the beyond the master's level or beyond positions that either prefer to require it, it definitely does get steadily, not even steadily, dramatically whiter, including even like lighter, I'll admit my own privilege, lighter skinned Asian or lighter skinned BIPOC as well. So, so like Patty, I'm going to be a little opinionated. I don't know. I think we should perhaps not as much, how do I say it? We should make sure there are jobs for our library graduates instead of handing out the degrees like candy, is what I'm saying. And this has been a very contentious opinion of mine, I admit. I have said this before publicly in a Q&A at a library conference, and it was not well received. So I don't say it too publicly too often in those spaces, because I also do believe that everyone comes into librarianship for various paths. But I think before we constantly keep creating these programs, we really need to think systematically, how are these kids going to get jobs after? So, all right, I'm going to step back from my pulpit.
I agree with what Annie had just said. I think part of our program is, I think it's great. But I also feel that what libraries could do, or library program could do better a job, is perhaps not just like Annie said, not hand it out like just free candy, right? But to make the program, the degree, even more valuable, right? Because it seems like we mentor, we get people to come in, and we say what a great profession it is, and it is great, but we also have to follow through in terms of securing jobs for them, right? Or helping them connect with resources that can get them there, right? Because then we have people that come out, and then they might feel like, oh God, there's nothing out there for me. I'll just have to start out as a clerk with my master's degree, right? And like Michael said in the chat, there is a financial constraint at the end of the day for you when you're doing this. Especially you're doing it on your own, you're working full-time as at Stater Brothers, and then you're going to school full-time and getting your degree at the same time. So there is that challenge, that difficulty that we need to recognize, but we also need to come together like in this format with the AANHPI, right? That people need to get involved, like Patty said, get involved in the association, get involved in interest group, get involved in various networking, so that you can build your skills and then go and secure that job, that wonderful job that you may be working for Patty and Michael at Gayathri. That would be wonderful. I mean, you're hearing all of us. You'll be able to get our contact information, reach out to us, right? But the program itself, not just the library profession, but I think the program itself needs to maybe do a more intentional job in terms of helping the students carry after graduation. What does that look like for them, right? Because they're hungry for this degree, right? And then after they finish, what's next? Where's everyone for them? How are they finding? Because I'm hearing students are having difficulty finding jobs. And then with everything that's going on, some of us folks that would have retired a few years ago can't retire sooner. And so that holds up the spot for other folks. And then it moves down the ladder as well. And so it's a domino effect and so I think for students out there, my thing is, yes, we recognize as library leaders, there are things that we can do better. But at the same time, we're looking for you to give us input and what it looks like from your lens. Because we've been in this business for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And so we need to hear your voices to make us better leaders and to help you in the long run, in the future, to become a much more effective leader and even a better leaders than the rest of us on this panel. So, and that's our goal, is to always leave it better for you and for your generation and the generation after that.
I think one of the things that we could do, and hopefully I'm able to do, is to identify the paraprofessional team. I think is the one that I'm most interested, honestly, because that's the group that has a lot of connection with the community and does a lot of work with the community, and yet there's a level that they can't get over. That's it. They're stuck there. So, and I also see, interestingly, they also are the group that doesn't really know a lot of information. For example, Palo Alto actually has funding for people to get their degrees. Just from an AA degree to a degree, actually, we have funding for that. So not knowing that really has inhibited a lot of folks. So one of the things that we've become more intentional is to have that conversation. And then the other side of it is also helping them get through the library school, but giving them more practical experience, right? Like just getting the degree is not enough because there is a lot of competition, as we know. So trying to give them more active roles in projects that we're doing, in programming that we're hosting, or even working with other departments. We've become very intentional, and I hope that we can do that more. For library school students, that's what I would say is, I just remember that when I came here, right, that was like within the first 5 years of me being in the country. I was in library school, and I had actually zero work experience when I came to this country, and so I could not even write anything in my resume. So I took every experience that I could. I became a page in a public library, but I also was working in San Jose State University library. Just pretty much, never discount great experiences. There's a lot of things that happen that, keep an eye on it, reach out to all of us, and we might be able to, provide you with not just, information, but also actual experiences. We're all looking for talents that we can use to connect with our communities. So use us.
Do you have any tips for students and library workers on how to approach cultural program planning with sensitivity?
Simply co-create with your community. I believe partnerships are vital to the future relevance of public libraries, our ability to have impact in our communities. Having partners and allies to help develop library programming is the best way to have customer focus, to center your community, and also insulate yourself from criticism. It's not foolproof, but it's so important that you have allies that are supporting the work that you're doing in your local community.
I second what Michael said. And Michael and Patty know this. I call them for advices all the time. I've been in this profession for over 35 years, and I'm still looking to those folks to give me. And I'm like, Michael, do you have any questions on certain position we're working on? Patty, how do you do it so successfully? Everybody's looking at you, and you speak so eloquently, and you speak from your heart so naturally. How does that work? And so I'm still learning. So don't ever think that once you're a director, there's nothing you need to do. To be a better leader is to continue to learn from others. And that's my advice to you. And now that Anthony hopped on, I asked him for a question too. I'm like, hey, you're the first Asian doctor for a program for my former library school. So yeah, I need to reach out to you. And since then, Anthony's just reeling me in on all these crazy ideas, and I love it. I love it. And then so welcome, Anthony.
To see everybody. Thank you so much. Apologies for not being able to join you earlier. But thank you for your collegiality, your camaraderie, your advice, your wisdom. It's been an honor working with all of you and getting to meet all of you over these past 5 years. So
if I could just jump in on and echo what both Jeanette and Michael said about that partnership with community. One of the things that partners can do for you is tell you the truth. So a lot of times our library, we love, learning, but we also think sometimes we know everything. So we make assumptions, I think, based on our prior experience, but unless we have lived experience, we don't really know. And co-creating with your community is the best way, not only of stronger understanding, but allowing the community to tell the truth about the programs that you currently offer. Because that, I think, we don't do enough of that. I think there's a little bit of, I don't know if it's fear, but I know at least for some of, not just my team here, but other teams as well, even selecting in different languages. We don't have that language expertise all the time. If we don't go to the community who's actually going to be reading those things, right, or using that material, why would we hesitate? Yes, if we were lucky and if I had, maybe even a tenth of Mike's wonderful team, because he has lots of language expertise on staff, but most of us don't. So I encourage all of you who are actually maybe interested and everywhere we go, no matter where you go, there's going to be another group that speaks another language. I can assure you. And so if you don't have that currently, number one, try to get an intern and groom them so that they can become part of your library staff. But if you can't do that, reach out to your community that actually already speaks and is well versed in that language, and they will help you. Another shout out to the Ethnic Professional Library Associations, because that too is another resource of people who you may not have any of those groups that are close to you, but I bet they would be willing to do coaching online or in a lot of different ways. Anyway, you know how to reach us, so please do so.
All right, and if I can just ask one final question, since we're running out of time, and you can answer this with, one word or one sentence is totally okay. What is one professional topic or crucial skill that you would recommend to students who invest time in learning to prepare them for a career in leadership and advocacy?
Grab every opportunity you have. Opportunity missed is opportunities for you to be more successful.
Amen. Be curious, become a student of management, of leadership, of customer service trends. Just keep learning, and don't be afraid to reach out to people that you admire. Seek their guidance, seek their counsel. People are more generous than you might otherwise think.
My first class was in San Jose State, was one of the management classes, the required management classes. And the question that the instructor asked at that time was, who wants to be a library director? And now, remember, I had not very much experience even with public libraries in this country, but I raised my hand because it sounded really good to me to lead something. I think it's like dream. It's okay to dream. Even if you think that it's impossible, it's okay. Guess where I am now? So if I can do it, all of you can do it. And reach out. I mean, one of the reasons that I think I've been where I am is the amazing people that have helped me throughout my career. And so don't feel like you can't reach out or, oh, I've only seen this person one time. No, it's okay. Reach out and you will get help. Library field is one of the most generous fields that way. We're very good about collaborating. We're very good about sharing. So please reach out to us. And Anthony, really thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Gayathri. And I just wanted to say, Erica, that again, looking at all these faces here, there really is generosity of spirit. So everyone here I've asked favors for, and they have been so gracious in providing their time and expertise. And of course, it becomes a give and take, right? So obviously, anytime anyone here asks me of anything, I will definitely try to help them as well. So Erica, it creates this really wonderful relationship, right? Where we make ourselves available to one another. And so I just wanted to express that because I'm looking at all these faces. It's been a fast 5 years, but everyone's been so generous with their time and expertise. And obviously, anytime I'm needed or I can help them, I will do that. And creating that network based on helping one another is a beautiful way to be.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. If I can walk in front of 400 people in the front row with a roll of toilet paper sticking behind my Navy suit and still become a library director, you're all going to be okay. So I'll be okay.
Just very quickly, I would say soft skills, emotional intelligence. I think Mike mentioned intellectual curiosity. I would say appreciative inquiry. And I know that it's not commonly, well, a lot of people are using this phraseology, but thinking about systems, executive thinking, we don't always teach this, but be curious about the world we live in but also to be authentic to yourself. And so that also means spending a little bit of time knowing and getting to know yourself better. What you value, how you appreciate, what things get you excited about the work, and what gives you pain points, and kind of figuring out why.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. This concludes today's symposium. Thanks once again to all of our speakers today, Annie, Jeanette, Gayathri, Michael, and Patty. Thanks to Dr. Chow, Dr. Gosart, Maria, Nicole, Cadence, and the iSchool team, and all the officers and members of the AANHPI iSchool students. Wishing you all a very happy AANHPI Heritage Month.